And welcome, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, and I am host and creator of Positive Talk Radio and my Independence Report. And in telling the stories that I have throughout the course of the show, I thought that it was important to kind of put this down in my own words for people to listen to and to reflect. So, when I was growing up, starting when I was 9 years old, I was considered a decent athlete. I played baseball all the way through high school, and I played football, and I wrestled, and I played basketball, and all with the intent one day of perhaps being able to take it to the next level. And in football, I got some scholarship offers and that kind of thing. And in baseball, I was on the all-star team of the various leagues for 7 or 8 years in a row, and I was a catcher. In basketball, I was a good shooter, and I played well, but I was too short, and I was too light for football. I only weighed 178 pounds, and in baseball, I played for a long time, but the better I got and the higher degree of competition there was, I learned that I could not hit a curveball. So, ended that. And so I ended up going to work after high school and sold shoes and did a bunch of different things. And one day I was with my girlfriend and she said, you know, there's a new movie out. And this is in 1977. There's a new movie out and I'd like to go see it. And I said, what's it called? She said, I'm not really sure. I think it's called something like Rocky. I don't know. But I've heard good reviews about it, and so I would like to go see it. So we did. And I gotta tell you, I love Sylvester Stallone. I love the movie. I love the concept. And I got to thinking to myself after the movie, you know, I could be a boxer. And so when I went home and I looked up boxing gyms in the Seattle area, there was a professional gym on 7th and Union. It no longer exists now, and it doesn't matter, but at that time, it was one of the premier Northwest boxing gyms. Boone Kirkman trained there, and Ivar Arrington, and just a bunch of professionals that were there. Mike Quarry was there for a period of time. And so I went down to the gym, and I met a gentleman by the name of Joe Toro. He was a professional trainer, and he also was a promoter. And we talked for a bit, and he said, I don't know, get into the ring and let's see what you got. So I got into the ring with a guy by the name of Joey Velez, who was a major lightweight fighter years ago. And he cleaned my clock. That taught me I wasn't in very good shape. I was overweight, and that I needed to really trim down and to get into shape. And so I started to do that. And so I went there 3 or 4 days a week, and I started running. I lost about 25 pounds. And Joe said to me one day, he said, you know, kid, he talked like this. You know, kid, I can make you, kind of like Mickey from Rocky. You know, kid, I can make you champion of the world. You could be the greatest middleweight fighter there is. You got a hell of a punch, kid. You can do all of this if you really tried. And so I decided, you know, I'm going to give this a shot. This might be my way of becoming a nationally known boxer and perhaps a world champion. Joe said I could do it. So why can't I try? So I continued to work out and continued to work out. And one day he came to me and he said, you know, we go up to the Monroe Reformatory and we fight the inmates. The Monroe Reformatory was actually nothing but a glorified prison for younger people. And he said, yeah, we pick people that are likability and have the same amount of work and stuff like that. And then we pair them up and then we entertain the inmates. And I said, that sounds like fun. I think I'll go do that. And so we prepared for it a little bit, and I wasn't ready. I didn't know that I wasn't ready, but I really wasn't ready at the time. And so we drove up there. I drove Joe and several of the other fighters up to the Monroe Reformatory. And I don't know if you've ever been to a prison. I've never been to a prison on purpose or been subjected to being incarcerated. But, you know, there are lots of gateways you got to go through and security that you've got to do. It really was not a great experience for me. And then when we got to the ring, there were bleachers on 2 sides. And as they filled up, one filled up with all white inmates and the other one filled up with all black inmates. They were segregated, but that was self-segregation between each other. And I watched several of the fights, and I thought that I could do well here. And so I was looking forward to my chance in the ring. And when it became my turn, I got into the ring with a black gentleman who was obviously an inmate. And what I didn't realize was that all these guys, all they had to do in life was to train. I come to find out years later that he may have fought outside of jail and maybe had up to a couple of professional fights. So it was not an even match, but I didn't know that at the time. And so I got into the ring and we started our bout. And in the first part, I did very well. I had an extraordinarily powerful punch and I was very quick. I hit him a couple times in the head and he almost went down, but I didn't know how to follow up. I was very inexperienced, but I finished the first round and did well and went back to my corner, and my trainer said, who is Joe, said, "You did good, kid. You did good, but look at you. You're all winded and stuff. You're not in the type of shape that you need to be." And I knew that, but I didn't know that the competition was going to be so fierce. And so the second round began, and he regained his momentum, and he started to take control of the match. I didn't understand. I didn't have enough experience to make it work well for me. And about 2/3 of the way through the round, he pinned me against the ropes. If you've ever been to a boxing match and the referee says, "Protect yourself at all times," they really mean it. Protect yourself at all times, because I was up against the ropes and he was pressing in on me, and the referee stepped in to separate us, and the guy took a step back, and I made the cardinal sin that you never do in that particular sport. I dropped my hands. And so while the referee was pulling him apart, he threw a punch and he hit me in the face. And the next thing I knew, I was on the ground. And the referee was counting to the count of 5 and 6. And well, I got up. But suddenly, it was really weird. I saw 2 of everybody. I saw 2 of him. I saw 2 of the referee. I saw 2 of Joe. And I knew that I had been hurt. I thought it was my nose that had been broken, but it wasn't. It was my cheek had been completely decimated. And so I waved it off and I told Joe, no more, I'm done. And as I went over to be where Joe was in my corner, both nostrils started to spew a ton of blood. And of course, the referee, who wears white, by the way, came over to check on me, and I was still breathing heavily and I was bleeding through my nose. And so he came up and put his arm or hand on my shoulder and turned me a little bit, and I blew blood all over his white shirt. And he said, "Oh, man." Well, they gave me a towel, and then they took me to the infirmary. The medical personnel looked at me. You know you're hurt when somebody looks at you and they have a really strange look on their face, like, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" So they determined that because they were concerned I might have a concussion, and my face was a little collapsed on one side and stuff, so they decided to send me via ambulance to the Monroe Hospital. And then my parents came up, and they, being 19, and they took me to the Swedish hospital downtown, where my dad had some connections, and they took some x-rays, and they determined that I had a broken cheek. My whole side of my face was numb because the nerves had been attacked and so forth. And so eventually I went home, and the swelling subsided, and then I had to have plastic surgery to put my cheek back in place, so that because if they didn't do that, my eyeball would have just fallen, and I would have looked even stranger than I do today. And so the couple of things that I learned through that, number one, and it turned out to be a real blessing for me, and I'll tell you why. When this happened, I had been told that I could be the champion of the world. Well, you take a lot of abuse, and boxing is a sport, if you even can call it that, where the entire purpose is to beat the other guy up and to knock him out. And when you get knocked out, it does cause brain damage. I decided at that point that I wasn't going to go back, because I thought that my cheek would be compromised and that I might break it again. What I learned through that, and the positivity that I take from that, is that I was good enough, strong enough, had a tough chin, that I could have continued on, but I would have ended up brain damaged, and my lifespan would have been a lot shorter than it is, and I would not have been able to think straight to do this type of show. So it was really important for me that I quit doing that, and I resigned myself to watching Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 4, and understood how difficult it is to be a boxer, how painful it is, and how life-threatening it can be. And even today, I'm doing the show that I'm doing today, and I've got a couple of kids that work with me. One is named Rocky, and one is named Ivan, which is directly from Rocky 4, Rocky Balboa and Ivan Drago. And so I thought it was a very unique thing for me to go through, and I learned a tremendous amount from it. I, to this day, do not watch boxing because I think it is a blood sport, and it is not indicative of how we should be treating each other. And so that was my Rocky story from way back in 1977. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed telling it. I hope you'll have a great day, and take care, everybody.